For our last piece, for Romanticism, we have the Palace of Westminster, also known as the Houses of Parliament. The architects are Charles Barry and Augustus Pugin. This is Romantic architecture, and it is definitely evoking the Gothic past with its associations with spirituality and community. It's interesting that the architects chose to revive the Gothic style in a time period where, in the United States, the buildings that were created just 30 years before this were so much focused on the neoclassical, with the domes and the revival of Greek and Roman architecture. And this goes out of its way to revive a medieval type of past. And so I always find this building, not only is it stunning, but it definitely doesn't look like it belongs from the century that it was built in. It definitely looks like it's an older building because of its style. People thought the modern era seemed ugly. There was a lot of factories in the major cities and in London, and so this is supposed to be a visual representation of morality and virtue of the old world, and also the materialism of the modern world. The Gothic revival stood for a fantasy of a medieval artisan craftsmanship in a period where craftsmanship had been replaced by machines and unskilled laborers. The function of this building today is that it is the seat of the government of England, including the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Both of those are Parliament, and they meet here. The British claimed Gothic as their inherited past, and during the 19th century, they will build many Gothic revival buildings. Remember, Gothic is originally placed in the 12th and 14th century, so we're talking like between 500 and 700 years later they created this. Now, Westminster Palace, as I mentioned before in the part about the slave ship with Turner, he did a piece on the burning of Westminster Palace. It had burned down in 1834, and the English government then is going to hold a competition for a design of a new building, and they explicitly said they wanted an English Gothic style in order to match the neighboring Westminster Abbey, where English monarchs are crowned. And that's also where William and Kate got married, if you were curious. So Charles Barry and Augustus Pugin won the commission, and it began construction in 1840, and it is an enormous structure. It has 1,100 rooms. It has more than 100 staircases and about 2 miles of corridors. It's considered a modern office building as it is the seat of Parliament, but it's cloaked in a revival of Gothic-style architecture. If you look at the close-ups here, I mean, these look like jam statues from a Gothic church. This is the tracery that was definitely part of the Gothic churches. You have this sense of verticality of this building with the spires and the, this building right here. It's just, it definitely evokes the Gothic past. So Barry designed a classical plan of a new building whose symmetry suggests a balance of power, while Pugin designed the Gothic decorations. And Pugin was the leading Gothic advocate at the time and even published an article where he compared the troubled modern era of materialism and mechanization unfavorably with the Middle Ages, which he presented as like the ideal. Pugin believed the modern era of industrialization, greed, and secularism had isolated man from his fellow man. For Pugin, Gothic was not a style but a principle, like classicism was for others. Only Gothic, he argued, could provide a moral compass that should be expected from a Christian society. He insisted that Gothic embodied the two great rules of architecture: that there should be no features about a building which aren't necessary for convenience, construction, or propriety, and that all ornamentation should consist of enrichment of the essential structure of the building. He believed Gothic structures represented honesty. For example, you can see the structural ribs and flying buttresses. They aren't trying to hide things like neoclassical structures are. Inside, there are 4 large mosaics over each doorway. In each mosaic is a saint that represents a different area of the United Kingdom. For England, the saint is St. George. For Scotland, it is St. Andrew. For Wales, it is St. David. And Ireland, or now Northern Ireland, it's St. Patrick. And most Gothic revivals of the period, though, were churches, and this is one of the ones that is the exception, as it is a government building. This right here is called, the whole structure of this is called Elizabeth Tower, and this actually was renamed not that long ago. And most people think of this as Big Ben, and that is correct, but the clock is what is called Big Ben, and it chimes, every hour on the hour, and it's pretty neat to hear. Um, it dominates the English skyline. It's very close. If you were to kind of pan out, there's a very famous bridge right here, and then the London Eye is just to, if we were looking this way at Parliament, is just to the right of the Houses of Parliament. Now, it's people who are not from England can't go into the Houses of Parliament. You have to be invited there by a member of Parliament. And I did go with an MUN group who was able to witness some debating on the floor of the Houses of Parliament, which is very different in a way than how our senators and our House representatives debate on the floor of the Congress building. It's definitely like a square shape where they face each other, and there's left and right, and it's a really interesting setup for where the actual Houses of Commons meet. Anyway, this is the Palace of Westminster. I know you guys would probably recognize it if you're a Harry Potter fan. They flew right past it. It's also, it's just one of the most iconic structures in London, and definitely was a target during World War II, and luckily it has survived, and it's just breathtaking to see in person.